Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems Author Podcast, which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and self-publishing. And before we begin, just remember that if you're a self-published author looking for help with your covers, blurbs, editing, or advertising, we have a whole suite of services we offer that can help. So check out the link in our description down below. And now, without any further ado, I would like to welcome our very special guest today, who has already wowed us with an amazing backdrop and a cat. She is Elle Christopher. She is a romance author. She is here to talk to us all about the launch of her first book, which is a topic I'm really, really interested in. So, Elle, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored.
Oh, well, we are honored to have you. And what a great answer. I'm wonderful. Normally when you ask people, they're like, oh, I'm okay, or something like that. It's like, I'm wonderful. What a great. Anyway, speaking of wonderful, we wouldn't be here without the wonderful man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm fantastic.
Oh, wow. That's even better. This is great.
Thanks again for joining us, Al. So, yeah, every once in a while we like to talk to authors that are just sort of starting their journey, because there are lots of things that everyone takes the whole journey differently, and the everybody who starts out, like, there's no right way to do this, right? And so while we give advice and you hear from different people about this works best or that works best, I mean, it's really dependent very heavily on an author and the skill set they have, the time they have, what they're comfortable doing. So I personally love hearing the story, the journey that new authors take, because it shows us, it shows the listeners, the people that haven't really started yet, that there is no one right path. You can do things completely differently and you can achieve success no matter what. So we wanted to talk to you about that and what your specific journey was. And I know you have some thoughts about, what you did and building up a brand when you're starting from scratch. So why don't you first tell us a bit about yourself and what got you to start writing all this, and what you've sort of, where you went to learn what to do, or if you just have been figuring it all out yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. Well, my background is actually in corporate marketing. I worked for one of the largest companies in the world and had a really great cushy corporate job. And my husband and I decided to take a real leap of faith, risky one, and pursue a dream together. And my life kind of shattered. My husband unexpectedly passed away. And so everything changed. I had 5 kids and no plan, and I had left my job. And so the way that I dealt with the catastrophic loss with having young kids was just writing. I was looking for a way to communicate with him, and I was sure if I just tried everything, maybe there would be some way. So I was mom and held it together by day, and at night, behind closed doors, I wrote to him, and I just wrote believing that he would read my words. And so that's how writing really started for me. It became a healing thing for me with my children as well. I gave everybody a notebook, and I told them, these are off limits. You can't read anyone else's. Express whatever thoughts, whatever you want to say to dad here. And we would do things like go out on a beautiful day and write poetry together, and just pick a random thing like a bird and let's write a haiku about it. And we shared it, and we would just write together. And we loved it. It brought us together. We expressed a lot of emotions that way, and was a wonderful way to process what we were feeling. And that's what writing was for me. It was a way for me to express my emotions and put the pain, love, and hope that I didn't know what to do with somewhere. And that's it. Just I also wanted to, it kind of started as a little story, and then it built a little bit more, and it became this book, this story. It's called Where Loyalty Lies, and it's not just a romance novel, but it's a deeply personal story about resilience and the kind of love that anchors you. And it gave me a way forward. And writing really became a lifeline for me. So for me, it was more of a emotional expression than just like a professional decision to, be a writer and pursue that path. It was more of a just bleeding on a page and processing all of the chaos and everything like that. So it's basically, to sum up my book, I would say it's a love letter to the kind of devotion and soul deep love that holds you together when everything else falls apart. So it's fiction, but everything is real. And that's pretty much where writing has started. And I'm very, in the infant stages of this. So I just decided to go all in and see what happens. I believed that if readers could read my words and feel my emotions, that was my goal, was to make them feel like they were right there with the main character. And the early feedback has been really successful that I've achieved that goal. So so this story saved me in some ways, and I hope that it speaks to readers, and this is really where my journey begins. So we're pretty close to the beginning right now.
Well, what an incredible story. I mean, what an amazing, just you describing that took me on an emotional roller coaster as I heard it. So wow.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, so much of writing comes from these personal experiences and journeys, and a lot of time that's what makes the books work so well, right? Because we're, like you said, bleeding out onto the page. And I think it's great that you were able to turn something like that into a positive, because obviously it was very difficult. It sounds, I can only imagine. So when you decided to put this together as a book, was that, did you do that because, you had all this writing, you weren't working anyway, or were you sort of like, did you consciously think, okay, I'm here now, I don't have that corporate job anymore, I've been doing this writing, let's see if this can become a new career path? Like, so what was your thinking there in terms of how it became something you wanted to try and publish?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had experience with my corporate job. I did a lot of writing, content, and I've always had this is going to sound weird, but an obsession with language. I love reading, but it's beyond that. One of the bonds that I shared with my husband was that we could just talk forever, and we knew everything about each other, but we just were like obsessed with talking and wordsmithing and analyzing, and just I have such a love for the language. And just when when somebody can take like a beautiful piece of poetry, for example, or a beautiful book, how somebody can use the same words that we use all the time, that have been around for hundreds of years, but in such an eloquent, beautiful way, they can make you feel something. And so it just always felt like maybe there was something underlying there that I loved. That was one of the things I loved about my corporate job, was the writing. And so the more I wrote and the further I got in this process, the more I felt I couldn't go back to the corporate thing, because if I had to, I would. It's definitely my backup plan. But this just felt like a weight lifted and a way to express myself. And I felt like if I could just touch someone else, maybe they're going through something, maybe they just want, to feel they haven't, felt love yet, and they want to, just dream, or, uplifting, or just be taken on how a book can take you on a journey. You can be right alongside with somebody, you can travel, you can go to, distant past or the future. You can just do so much through a book. And I've always thought that was amazing. And so, I don't know, I just felt like there was something inside that said I had to do this. I don't really know, just an intuition. And the voice just was like, just keep going. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. And I don't have a great, plan. Of course, my dream is to be, a best-selling author, but I'm over the moon right now, just with wonderful feedback from early readers, and that's like super small. I've had like one pre-order, so I'm very, starting at the super bottom and beginning right now. And being an indie author, I think I have all of the odds working against me. I don't have, a publisher or any, I'm unknown. So I have a lot of challenges ahead, but I'm trying to, learn as I go and hoping for the best.
That's I love hearing about how passionate you were to actually get this completed, because I think that's one of the challenges. So many people have a book inside them, so many people start them, so many people never finish. But I wonder if your background in corporate marketing helped, because I come from that background as well, and part of it is it's all about telling stories. I mean, people don't think about, when you're writing press releases for a company that makes fire extinguishers, you still have to tell stories in these things to engage people. And it's kind of a skill that builds up that I think goes very well into novel writing and telling bigger stories, because you can understand at the micro scale how to engage people and take them on an emotional journey, and it's clearly in your blood. I mean, when you're describing how what inspired you to write this book, I was hooked on every word. So
thanks. Yeah, I agree with you. The company that I work for is a huge energy conglomerate, so they weren't the sexiest products that we sold, and so it's about storytelling and marketing campaigns and product launches and all of that. I had done this, and I even was a social media manager and done all of this. But it's kind of funny, because now that I'm on this other side of it, I'm struggling with marketing, because I don't have a team. I'm doing everything. So I'm editing my book. I'm just finishing the round of beta reading, and so I'm incorporating feedback, and it's a full-time job. Plus, I mentioned I have 5 kids, so and I'm mom and dad to them. So the cooking, all of the responsibilities that fall on 2 people with an average amount of kids, but 5 is quite a bit. So it's a lot. But I feel like I'm kind of failing in the marketing side, which is ironic, because that's my background and I used to be so good at it, and I could market products that were very difficult to market. But it's, time is a challenge, but I feel like it's going to get easier, as I learn. I feel like I'll get, any new routine or any challenge in life, things are difficult at first until you figure it out. And then it's like riding a bike. You can now you have mastered that. So now you can take on more, and your capacity grows and things like that. So
it's a very challenging position any first-time author finds themselves in. I mean, I've noticed, I write romance novels under a pen name, and I've sold 70,000 copies of them, and I've got a mailing list and stuff like that, which means whenever I publish a new book, I automatically have a big infrastructure that I've built up, which I can rely on, which you don't have, and you have to start from scratch, that's the challenge, and it's the opportunity. And it's a challenge that to many people is insurmountable, but it's a challenge that if you do surmount it, so to speak, then that is the path towards being able to be a writer full time, and you build this thing out. And one of the strongest reasons people ever buy books is through word of mouth and author recognition and having a relationship there. So it is when you start off making connections individually with each person, and maybe it seems small, but it builds and it snowballs until it is something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm finding that already with my beta readers. It's not a huge team or anything like that, but some of them are fantastic cheerleaders already. They've fallen in love with my book and my writing style. And I've taken, a little bit of a risk with the way that I was writing. I know it. My goal was I wanted the reader to feel it. I wanted them to feel like they were right there with the main character. And the feedback is, I've absolutely achieved that. But it is a little bit different than your typical romance novel. It's more immersive and very raw and emotional. And I think sometimes people are expecting a sweet, and it's not, it has a happy ending, and it is sweet, and it is a wonderful love story. It's the way that my love story with my husband lives on. He lives on through this book. And one thing that has been really awesome is almost everyone that has read it so far has told me they've fallen in love with Sam, the main character. And I'm like, well, that's my husband. But, so it's really cool that way. But yeah, I agree. It's a real challenge when you don't have any, nobody knows who you are. You could have the best book in the entire world, but if nobody knows about it, you're,
Yeah, exactly.
uphill battle.
Yeah. And that's always the issue, right? I mean, in corporate marketing, depends on the product, but a lot of times, your product is up against some competitors, but not as many competitors as a romance book is going to be up against, right? You're up against literally millions of books.
And you have a brand behind you too to fall back on. In corporate marketing, there's a brand. So if you have a new product, you've already got kind of a captive audience.
Yeah. So it's like with romance, even though you have that going for you, you've been in the corporate marketing and like you said, you had products that weren't necessarily the sexiest products and you still were able to market them. It's still a tougher thing to be able to market your book because it's, you have nobody, nothing behind you saying who you are, what you are. You have to stand out in the sea of a billion other books, So, but at least, you have that skill set. So, and that's all that most of us have at the beginning anyways. And it does get easier as you have more books behind you. You start getting reviews, word of mouth, as Roland was saying, which is huge. Hopefully your beta readers will go out. Maybe they become part of your street team and, just the social media aspect. You said you did some of that for corporate marketing, right? So you get up on Instagram and TikTok and so book talks and this is and that's right. There's a million things to learn, but each book that you write becomes a little bit easier too. So that's but everybody's got to start somewhere for sure. And it sounds like you have a lot of the skills that other people don't have when they start out.
Yeah. And, like I was going to say before about the beta readers, it's interesting how some people are, stand out. And I have some really wonderful Goodreads reviews already. And, they're cheerleading for me and hyping my book and stuff like that. So I can feel support, and these are people that I didn't know before. It's amazing to see that it's resonating with them. And early reviews have been really amazing. Just to see that it's reaching people and hitting them the way that I had hoped. And, I had asked for specific feedback to see if I nailed, some of my goals there. And people can see themselves in the story and it's just really been awesome. So I think that already is very motivational, knowing that, okay, well, it's landing with people and the feedback has been great. And, the momentum is starting. I know I'm early in the process. So the book releases on August 26th. So we're pretty early, but I'm a big planner and I have a lot of marketing planned once I have my polished draft. I'm doing beta reading right now, and then I will be sending it to the editor in about a week. So I'm working very tirelessly, very late into the night and just, I know this is a necessary part of the process until one day, hopefully I can have, one support or something like that, but for now, how it is when you start your marketing, your editing, your everything. So
yeah. And it sounds like you have figured everything out, all the steps out, right? Because a lot of first-time authors, they don't necessarily get beta readers and they don't necessarily get early reviews. They think about these things later in the process when maybe it's too late. I mean, you want those beta readers before you put the book out, and before you send it to your final editing and all that stuff, right? So it sounds like you've at least identified the steps that you need to take for success. Nothing guarantees it, but if you stick with certain steps, then you're going to have more chance to succeed, right? So what did you do? Did you end up researching sort of once you decided, okay, I'm going to take a chance, I'm going to turn this into a book, self-publish it? Did you start like researching, reading about the different things that you have to do for all the different steps? How did you figure all that out?
I did. Massive amounts of research, just to find out, what are the best practices. I know so this is more for just indie authors and also, I guess, traditional publishing is a very different animal, but how, to DIY this, I just wanted to give myself every opportunity, and I'm afraid of missing something. So I wanted to learn, what are all of the steps required for success, and just, do my best to just take one step at a time, carefully, but with a plan. And I'm hoping for the best. So far so good. But I mean, I wish if it was sold out already. I'm just, like I told you, I'm my bandwidth is so stretched that it's such a irony that marketing is the part that is my weakness right now. My old self, if I could look at my own marketing right now, would be really ashamed, but the writing is good. So, I'm just figuring out as I go, but I think it was just the answer to your question is a lot of research. I actually made a plan, every phase, so having beta readers and ARC readers, and I wanted to, one of the things that is most important to me and slows things down a little bit, but I think is a bigger value than almost anything else, is really appreciating my readers. There's, I have few right now, but they're fantastic. They are strangers that said yes and gave my book a shot and fell in love with it. And I just show my appreciation for them and take the time to make sure they know how grateful I am for them to be part of this early process. Their feedback has been awesome, and just to let them know I'm incorporating their feedback and how important they are for helping me shape this story. So when it's goes to the editor, for its final polish, it's as good as it possibly can be. And so those people, I think, are going to be important long into my career. I can imagine that I'll, lean on them for more in the future, and I will be grateful and reward them in every way that I can for being an early support. But I think that personal connection I'd love to always have with my readers, no matter, whatever happens. If by some crazy chance I have a best-selling book one day, maybe it's 3 books in, maybe it's 300 books in, I don't know. But I will always treasure the readers, because I know without them, none of this is possible. And they're really the reason for it. I mean, this was an expression for my emotions, but it was to an audience, and one person at a time. I wanted to touch one person. And so every time that happens, I'm like blown over and just in awe of it. And so I read a review and I'm just like, oh, wow. It's just one of those amazing things. So I'm enjoying that part of the process, but I know that alone doesn't make you money. And I guess I hope to be able to make a living. I mean, my ultimate goal is to be able to make a living writing, just to, be able to support my family. And I don't need more than that, but that's the dream, Right. I know that's probably a far way off, but yeah.
Well, listen, you're doing things the right way, and the social media aspect of it and the connection to the readers is so key. And that is something that a lot of authors don't think about until too late. And I'll say that when I look at various authors that that we work with and such, one of the biggest differentiators that I see between the successful ones and the not as successful ones is the successful ones are building that relationship with readers in a much richer way, which has so many benefits, right? And I see them doing social media right. They're not like only posting when they have a new book and like, here's my new book, and then they go away for a few months and then they come back, here's my next new book. That doesn't work, right? These people are posting regularly. They're talking about their lives, whether it's a fictional made-up life, who knows, or if it's their real life, but they're building that connection with the readers, and the readers are responding and they're staying engaged. And when you can keep them engaged, they're going to want to buy your book. They're going to want to talk about you. They're going to want to share your stories. They're going to want to help expand your audience, right? And it sounds like the things that you're doing right, and those are so key. And that's one of the biggest things I see a lot of authors, newer authors, and even ones that aren't newer, get wrong. That's one of the things that I personally got wrong at the beginning, is not not really spending that time with the social media. I'm not a fan of social media. I don't spend a lot of time on it. So, but I eventually saw that was one of the key differences, because you really do want to build up a community of readers that are engaged with you. And that's how you build that long-term success for sure. But, one thing you mentioned, I just want to just touch on is that you said something like, oh, if it's sold out, that'd be great. It's like, that's the corporate world thinking, because there's nothing to sell out here. If you got an ebook, you'll never sell out. It's digital. You'll keep going. So,
right.
So don't use that as your metric of success, or you'll never achieve it.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
I think one of the beautiful things about self-publishing that really excites me, I'm like an evangelical for self-publishing, because it used to be the case that you would probably never get the opportunity, but maybe you'd be lucky enough to have a mainstream big five publisher grab your book, and the whole thing was you have one author and they sell 1 million copies. And now it's more like 1 million authors. Oh no, sorry, you have 100 authors and they sell 1 million copies each. But it's like now it's almost like you could have 1 million authors who each sell 100 books each, and because you can reach so many more people. And when it comes to wanting to build a career out of being an author, if you did it the traditional publishing route, it would have to be like you're selling tens of thousands of copies, hundreds of thousands of copies, millions of copies. Whereas a self-published author, because you are your own business and you don't have to support, the big skyscraper in Manhattan and stuff like that, you don't need to reach that many people to be able to make a living doing what you're doing. There's a guy called Nick Stevenson who has a book called 10,000 Readers. And it's like, if you have 10,000 readers and you write books on a regular basis, you have a 6-figure career that you can quite happily survive off, which I think is a really beautiful thing about self-publishing. And it used to be about your books had to have broad appeal. And now it's almost like you want your books to have a narrow appeal, appeal that sometimes can be so ridiculous. I was thinking the last book I bought was yesterday at Barnes & Noble. It's a kid's book and it's called Olivetti. And it's about an Olivetti typewriter that solves crimes or something. I haven't even read the whole book yet, but it just is. My father back in Africa used to work for Olivetti. My first typewriter when I was 12 years old was an Olivetti. That's why I became a writer. And it's like, look, this author wrote a book about an Olivetti typewriter and I bought it because I've never met this author before. This author has never met me before, but now we have a connection by this. And it sounds like with your book, so much of your heart is being poured into it and it's making connections with people. And it's like, that's a beautiful thing to be able to offer people the opportunity to do that, to like meditate inside your head, to see the world and the characters that you're building. And yeah,
I'm not sure meditate that would be great, but it's more of like you'll feel every emotion. There's a lot of ups and downs, but I love what you said, because it's about connection, and whatever way that you can connect with somebody, it's awesome. And it's cool that book hit you that way. I think it's, now there's, I can't believe some of the people that I've met, that the amount of books that they read just in a month, like on Bookstagram and Book Talk and stuff like that. It's awesome. It is absolutely awesome. The amount of books, and so to what you said before about, how many books an author sells, and also just the reach is amazing, because it's such a consumable thing. As an author, and you think of like your book, you want this to be a wonderful story, and maybe it's, becomes a classic one day or something like that. But people love to read. They love to be taken on an adventure. They love the variety of what's available, and the fact that it's, you find these things through social media and ebooks, and the fact that the indie authors, it's so accessible for anyone to write a book. I mean, anyone can write a book. It's amazing and scary at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some have really good quality control and some don't, but you know what? That's an awesome thing, is that, it's very different than it used to be, where if you weren't picked up by a big publishing machine, then, before all of this technology, you just, maybe it was impossible. I don't even know, but it's amazing how there are so many tools out there now and platforms for you to self-publish and self-promote and market your books, that it's, there's a lot to learn, and a big learning curve, and I'm sure you still are missing something, but it's really awesome that the opportunities are there now, and that you were able to find that book, and people can just find a connection with different books and different authors. And there's it's on one hand, sometimes it's intimidating to go online and you look and you see these successful authors and you're like, oh my God, I'm not that, maybe I'm never going to be that, oh, I'm so far behind, but at the same time, like you said, that the 10,000 readers, that you don't need everyone to buy your book. If you just have a great amount of people that you've connected with, and it resonates with people, and word of mouth, and you could have a really great career. And that's my dream. Is I'd love to have my book be part of like book clubs or something where it's just it's a romance, it's a love story, but the biggest takeaway from my book is this transformation that this woman makes, a personal transformation, and it resembles my own personal transformation in life, and how my husband was a huge catalyst in this, and just a woman who didn't know who she was at the beginning of the book, and by the end she becomes the woman she always wanted to be. And so it's like an empowering story, and my goal is just to lift readers up and take them on a really beautiful and sometimes emotional and tense, and just all of the feels are in this book. But I think it's awesome that there's just so many opportunities to and then the next one they read could be a rom-com or whatever. There's just a variety. And so yeah, I'm just lucky that the time is this all came together now, and technology is here and the platforms are there, and people have paved this way where it's possible for somebody who's an indie author to DIY this. And I guess we're going to see how well that works for me.
Yeah, it's the self-publishing industry has certainly democratized the idea of anybody being able to write a book. We don't have to be beholden to the gatekeepers, the big five, and whether they think that we have something that's worth selling. And I think we've all seen by the rise of different genres and different types of books that they could never get published before, and how popular they've become, that system was not ideal. And it just basically kept everything sort of static. And, you couldn't really have a new voice out there, because who would want to take the chance on that and invest on that, right? So people are allowed to invest in themselves and take whatever chances they want, and the market will tell us whether or not what they have is worth selling. And so, yeah. So what are your thoughts on how you want to brand yourself and what you're going to do for that, because you come from corporate marketing and branding and all that stuff, right? So, and I know you had mentioned to me earlier that was something that that you're thinking about, is the branding behind it. So usually, and that's great, because usually at this stage authors aren't thinking as much about that, and the fact that you are shows again that you're taking this the right way. You're thinking about things early the way you should, because it allows you to lay the groundwork, even though it might take some time, obviously, to build a brand. You're not going to do it with your first book on your first launch day, but still you want to set the groundwork.
Yeah. So honestly, my vision for my brand is to just be genuine and be sincere and be myself. I'm not, it's funny because I used to run social media marketing for this company, but I had no social media presence of my own in my personal life, just because I had a really wonderful life, and I didn't feel that, I didn't need, I don't know, you hear about
external validation.
Yeah. I didn't need to
It's a very healthy attitude to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I loved doing it for my company. So it was just kind of this, different kind of take on it. But So this is new for me. I don't usually share a lot of like personal stuff, and that's kind of where I'm struggling right now with like finding that balance with what I share. And I kind of feel like maybe I'm still in corporate marketing mode where, like you said before, people, Craig, I think you said sometimes authors share like, here's my book, and then they don't show this personal side of them. So this is something that I'm going to, or that I want to lean into more. It's uncomfortable for me also because I feel like sometimes when you post things, you want it to be perfect, but the whole idea of the way, I think the popularity and, what people want to see on social media is just like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. And that's really how I am as a person. I'm just unapologetically myself. And so I think just the sincerity and just being myself is my brand, is just deciding like who I am, what I stand for, what value I bring to readers, and showing up as a human and letting them in and making the reader feel seen. That's important to me. And just finding my tribe and starting there, I guess, growing from that point. But as far as a brand, I don't think of like a big corporate thing. And I do find a lot of inspiration from famous authors that have a brand and they, have a thing. But just for me personally, I think it's too personal for me to put like a brand on it and to make it feel, I just want that emotional connection. And I just want,
Well,
I think that's much
what
more
you said. Yeah, and I think what you said is perfect. Like with social media, you don't need to make it perfect. You just have to make it real. And I think that is, especially maybe not with corporate stuff, but with personal, with authors, with anything where it's a personal brand, people I think respond best to that. They see it. I mean, the fact that you're being genuine really does come through. It's very hard to fake that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when you have a passion and people can see that, hey, this person's really passionate about something, good things happen. You don't maybe know what it is, but if you can take people on that ride and show them your passion and they get a feeling from you, and I think it just kind of builds from there. And maybe that's how people give an unknown indie author a chance, is they hear, hey, this is a great story, it's word of mouth, or they're touched by something else that maybe you post or something, and they decide to give you a shot. So yeah.
I think I've written an article about the 4 reasons people buy books, and one is that you're an author like Stephen King or something like that. So you write a book, it could be about, I don't know, toilets or something, and people would still buy it because it's Stephen King wrote it.
Right.
Another one is that it has a really interesting hook that just grabs you, that you have to read more. The third one is that it has like something unique about it that touches you, like that Olivetti book I just mentioned. But having a relationship with an author is that 4th reason, that thing where you might not know somebody, but by what they write in the book and the way they tell people about what this book is about, it makes you feel a connection to an author in a really strong, powerful way. And I was just thinking of all I've read, where I read one, grief is a very powerful thing to write about, and one book that I read, it was about an author wrote it. She didn't actually have any brothers, but it was about 2 brothers during the Holocaust. It was a big laugh fest, as you can imagine. But I remember reading it, and I had lost my own brother a few years ago, and I had tears streaming down my eyes because I was like, this is such a beautiful relationship with these two brothers and things like that. And it's once you have that emotional reaction to a book you've read, part of you like almost belongs to that author for the rest of your life. It's like, wow, you saw something in the world that I thought I was alone in experiencing, and like put it down on paper, and like I connected with it. And I think from everything that you've been saying, it sounds like that's what people have been feeling when they've read your book.
Yeah. And it's amazing how the same story can hit people in different ways. Just the feedback that I've gotten, and I was really, I don't know, I guess I asked a lot of like really detailed questions of my beta readers, and they were just absolutely amazing to read the story through, with those glasses on, the analytical glasses, but then also I wanted to know, like, how did the story make them feel, and how did certain things land with them and stuff like that. But it was so interesting, and I'm still getting the feedback. Deadline was today, actually, and so I'm like getting more of the feedback now, and it's exciting to see how, I think the certain takeaways are going to be, the love story and things like that, which are, but it's interesting to see things that I never expected were going to be like a real, I don't know, source of inspiration, or hit readers a certain way. And it was maybe just like a character that was not a main character, that just had a small role in the book that was like, they thought was amazing. Or I had actually my daughter's English and language arts teacher read my book. I know she's a romance enthusiast, and we share the love of like the classic literature. And so this was like a super vulnerable thing to do, but I asked her, would you read my book? Knowing that, it's the beta copy, and oh my gosh, how critical she could be and things like that. But she even had amazing feedback about the generations of women in her family. She was on vacation when she read it, and how it struck a chord with her that way about, the female relationships. And, I just hadn't, so it's interesting how one story kind of just seems like on the surface, it could, okay, yeah, beautiful love story. This woman went through a lot of difficulties or challenges in life, but the things that people pulled out of them were all so different that it is really cool, really amazing, because you just don't know which chord you're going to strike with people, and you touch them in different ways. And it's, I feel really lucky to be doing this, because it's, you write a book, and the beta reading is just a process, or getting feedback from readers is a process, but I didn't expect it to be so like eye-opening, but also just cool, because perfect strangers are reading your story. I mean, you guys have, I'm sure, experienced this for like the first time, where somebody else is reading your story, and it's kind of like you're on a stage naked or something. You're so vulnerable. You're like, oh my God, I don't know, you're just, it's,
yeah. And I mean, it sounds like the book has layers in it, right? And that's how it's able to hit different audiences different ways, which is really important for the quality of the book. I was going to ask, and I mean, you sort of like gave us a hint there too, is like where you found a lot of the beta readers. It sounds like when you were talking about it earlier, and we know like you don't have any following. It's your first book, obviously. So, and it's not always a great idea to be asking that friends and family. They're not necessarily going to give you the best advice. So where did you go to find all these beta readers?
I agree with you. Friends and family are wonderful, but not for this purpose, just because you want I mean, I have really thick skin. I want the brutal truth. It's right. If they love the story, that's awesome. But I was clear with my beta readers that I'm open to all the constructive criticism or feedback that they have, because I want this story to be the best it can be. But so my goal was to find my target reader, and, romance readers. I just cold called, I guess you could say, on like Instagram. I found some people that I follow that have a Bookstagram account, and I would just contact them and tell them a little bit about my book. I mean, just kind of pitch it and say, and I like, they had to be people that I thought, I know that they read romance, so that's my genre also, that maybe I saw that they beta read or arc read, and just, kind of took a gamble and asked people. Some of them were, people that I've interacted with already. So it was a little bit already, an established kind of acquaintance there. But some of the beta readers I had never talked to at all before. And it was just a random DM telling them a little bit about my book and asking if they would like an early read. And, I would tell them why I would, like maybe it was something about their posts that I thought would, I would really value their perspective for something like that. So it was just kind of, I asking the kindness of strangers.
You know, it's funny you talk about you were saying like, oh, I'm struggling with marketing. That's actually amazing marketing advice. If anybody's listening to this, I think that's something that a lot of authors don't give themselves credit for. They don't, it's as we've spoken about earlier, it's all about making connections with individuals and reaching out to people who you know like the kind of book that you think you've written and pitching them. That's actually phenomenal advice, and that can be really, really successful. And it's something that I think a lot of people, that maybe they're shy about doing it, or maybe they have that hesitation, but not having that, doing that, you could make some really amazing connections.
Yeah, I agree. It is uncomfortable. You definitely have to be okay with putting yourself out there. And this whole process has been that way so far. I mean, giving people an early copy of your book, you know, as I go through it, I'll find like a typo or something, and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I sent this to people, you know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the feedback that they have, maybe there's something little like, you know, there was a diner and somebody came in for coffee and they left with a mug. Like, that doesn't make sense. So, you know, there are little things, but that's the purpose of the beta reading process anyway. But, you know, as much as you try to make it as perfect as you can, it is a process, and you just have to be okay with being uncomfortable, okay with people being critical of your baby, kind of, right? You know, and I think you have to have like a really thick skin, and you have to just put yourself out there. It's a extremely vulnerable thing. And the truth is, I know I'm so far, I probably haven't even scratched the surface of how it's going to feel, because I mean, just last night I was on a roller coaster because feedback was coming in from beta readers, and it was like up and down and up and down. I mean, overall great, but you know, just you're like an 8 out of 10, like, wow, you know. I asked them to give it an overall rating. I'm sure I did just, you know,
It's so
put myself
subjective
through the
too,
ringer
right?
on, but
Well, yeah.
I wanted to know, like, I wanted to be inside their head and know exactly what they were thinking, because I genuinely want the book to be as you know, high quality as possible, and so that was really important to me. But yeah, the random DMs to strangers is awkward, you know, and some people didn't respond, and some people were, I'm sure, like, who are you? And not, you know, so like I said before, it's not a huge team, but they're amazing, amazing women, and just so grateful. I mean, I'm, you know, gonna show them gratitude more than they've shown me, but it's cool how people can will just show up. And it's amazing how, like you were talking about that book that you found yesterday, how something just as simple in this day and age with all the technology and all of the cool, fancy things that we have, how just a good old fashioned book, a document with words, no pictures. Well, okay, the cover, but you know, otherwise no illustrations, nothing fancy. It doesn't, like, it's not animated. It's not a movie. It's just words on a page, 300 and some pages. It's amazing how that connects us all. I mean, it's why we're here today. It's why Bookstagram exists on Instagram, and Book Talk, and, you know, Barnes and Noble is thriving, and Amazon and ebooks and all of this. I mean, it's fascinating how just the language, going back to what I told you at the beginning, this obsession that I've always had with our language, and just how simple it is. It's such a simple thing, a book, how it can bring people together, and just, you know, you can form friends for life. You can have a soul deep bond with someone. You can take them on an emotional journey. You can share things with somebody. And it's just like such a simple, simple thing.
I think it's, well, you know, we are approaching the top of the hour, but what a beautiful, beautiful point to end things on, because that's that wrapped things up brilliantly. Oh, well, Ella, it's been an absolute delight speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Craig, before I ask Elle to tell all our listeners, you know, where they can find out more about it, do you have any final questions?
No, but I will say, just to the final points that she was making, you know, the feedback you get from those beta readers, and you did it right. Like, you send it to more than one. You send it to as many as you can. Well, you know, within reason with beta readers, but still, you do want to keep in mind, you know, you gave them, you said rate it, but rating is so subjective, right? And everybody likes different things, and the best books in the world still have 1-star reviews. So you have to be able to look at some of that feedback and be like, okay, well, you know, this person didn't like that, but everyone else loved it, so I can disregard that as just a personal opinion of that person. You're never going to satisfy everybody, and that's okay, right? So, but like I said, you're doing it the right way, and you've sent it to enough people that you should be able to see what sort of the common issues are, and those are the ones you would think about actioning on. So I again, everything you did and everything you have done sounds like very well thought out, and you've really set yourself up for success in the best possible way. So thanks for coming on and sharing this with our listeners, because I think it's really important for them to see that this is something you can do without any kind of background and you just do your research, you just follow the steps, you write a good book, and that's it. So thanks again.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. This was awesome.
Well, Elle, to those listening or watching and who want to find out more about you and what you've got planned, where can they go? Where can they find out more about you?
They can go to my website, Elle Christopher, ELLE Christopher.com. And I'm on Instagram, Elle_Christopher, and TikTok, but I'm not sure anybody wants to see that yet. I'm still getting a hang of these things, but yeah, I would love to connect to anybody, with anyone, whether you're an early author like me. I know the indie community is amazing and very supportive, or a reader. I would love to connect and see what you think of my writing.
Oh, fantastic. We will be sure to pop a link down to your website in the description down below. And so we really do invite anybody watching this or listening to this to scroll down there and check that out. And while you're there, you might have noticed that big empty comment section. Please take a moment to leave Elle a comment. Let her know how much you appreciated everything she shared with us today. And of course, there is that like button. You want to give that a smash. You want to hit that bell icon to get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there's a subscribe button if you haven't already. So please be sure to hit that. Elle, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciated it.
Thank you. Can I just mention one last thing?
Of course you can.
The title of my book, in case you guys didn't catch it before, it's Where Loyalty Lies. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. So you can just search it and be my honor to have some more readers.
That is wonderful. Well, you heard it here first, so please do that. And thank you so much, Elle. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Fully Booked. So until then, cheerio.